And welcome everybody. Hello, it's Fatima Bey, the MindShifter again. And we are live here once again for MindShift Mondays. And so every Monday I'm on here at 7 to give you, plant some thought seeds in that big old brain of yours. So I'm continuing a current series called Character Assessment. So every week I'm talking about a different character that we need to assess in ourselves or in the people around us. And I talk about it in 3 different areas. I talk about it in the areas of dating, friendship, and business partnerships. So you can take it with it and do what you will. But I don't know how long I'll be on this series, but I'm going to be on it for a while because there's a whole lot of list of characteristics I have not talked about yet that we need to take a deep dive into. So if you don't know me, I do not talk about things just on the surface. I always take a deep dive into any topic I talk about. So even if I talk about a topic everybody else has talked about, typically I'm not talking about it the same way. Because most people stay in politically correct zones on the surface, and I do not do that. And everything I'm going to say, some of the things I'm going to say might sound harsh to you. They won't sound harsh to others, but sometimes they might touch sensitive spots. And because of sensitive spots, they might seem offensive sometimes. I'm going to still keep talking anyway, but I'm just giving you the warning now. But a lot of what I'm going to say isn't about judgment. It's about helping you to make wise choices in your life and in your life for yourself, but also for who you keep around you. So I talk a lot about principles. I'm going to talk about principles more than details. And so let's dive right into it. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and put them in the live, and I will reply to them at the end. All right. So today we're going to talk about perfect. So we all know what perfect is. Me, right? I know. Thank you. No, but really, we're talking about perfect. And I'm not going to talk about perfect or perfection in the way you probably would assume. I'm going to take a much deeper dive into the topic and not just talk about people that are perfectionists, which you can find anywhere. So I'm going to start by telling you I'm not going to use the word perfectionist because I'm talking about the reason I'm not going to talk about the word perfectionist. I'm not using the word perfectionist in the people I'm describing today because people very often get caught up in that word and they lose sight of the real point. It's kind of like squirrel. And then they miss the whole point because they're like, oh, you used that word. It means XYZ, but it means ABF. No. So get the word perfectionist out of your head because perfectionist is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something much deeper that more of us can relate to. So instead of saying perfectionist, I will say people who need to have everything just right. So there are different levels of this. Perfectionist is one level of it, and what we think of as perfectionists anyway. And when we need to have everything just right. So I cannot go outside unless my hair is just right. I cannot get on camera unless my makeup is just right. I can't even go to that event unless my outfit is just right. Now, to give you some balance, there's nothing wrong with any of those if they're balanced and by themselves. No, you don't want to just get on camera looking like you just crawled out of a toilet. No, you don't want to go to a black tie affair looking like you just crawled out of bed. So no, you don't want to be the extreme versions of any of that. However, for the person who thinks that they need to be perfect before they commit to doing an activity, that's what I'm talking about. So you need to be perfect before you date. You need to be perfect before you go to that party. You need to be perfect before you try and venture out on that entrepreneurial journey. When you have this mindset, you are your biggest problem. You are your biggest delay. You are the biggest thing in your way when you need to be just right. Now, there's a difference between needing things to be in a certain place before you move forward and everything's got to be just right. Do you see the difference between things have to be at a certain level, and then I can do what I need to do. For example, I will not leave the house if I have not showered. There are people that do that. I will not do that because I think that's nasty. So, unless you just showered last night, that's okay. But for me, that's a standard. I will not leave out the house. I won't even go to the corner store if I have not showered. That's not the same thing as I will not go to the store unless my hair is done and all the curl and iron and my wig is just right and my makeup is on and I got a tiara on my head, whatever your details are. Those two things are in fact different. The difference is I will not go out the house without being showered means I have a standard. It doesn't mean I need to be perfect. I'll go out without makeup. I might have on a hoodie and sweats. But I have a standard of making sure that I'm clean, that I feel comfortable in my own skin. Nobody's smelling something they shouldn't. I say that because y'all know what I'm talking about because you've been around them. So that's a standard. That it's not the same thing as saying I need to look just right. My hair's got to be done and all that. That's a different level. That's not a standard. That's thinking you need to be perfect. And that's different. And that's imbalance and not good. So I'll give you a couple examples because I want you to understand what I'm talking about and know the difference between them. And so one thing that people who need to be perfect and need everything just right, they make themselves miserable because they refuse to be happy with the fact that they got to this level because they didn't get to this level a certain way and it's not perfect. So therefore I have failed. And I'm miserable. Bullshit. I cannot date unless I'm at this certain level. Hold on. I'm going to save dating for a little later because there's a whole other thing. But that is a part of this conversation. So, you need to be at a certain level. Yes, I need to be at a certain level to do certain things. Absolutely. But do you need to be perfect? No, you don't. And you make yourself miserable. And while you do that, you make everybody else around you miserable. So when it comes to your friends, when it comes to people who keep around you in the area of dating, business, or friendship, when you look at these people and you know that they're like this, that everything's got to be just right, you want to be mindful of how close you want to be to them. And I'm not saying those people are bad or evil or ill-intended because most of the time that's not true. However, you have to decide whether or not you want to deal with that because it will spill over onto you because those same people are usually hard on themselves. Because they think they also have to be perfect. They think everything around them has to be perfect. Their job has to be perfect. Their money has to be perfect. Their children have to be perfect. Their friendships have to be perfect. Their relationship and marriage has to be perfect. And therefore I have to be perfect. All of that is not true. You need to be at a certain level. You need to be growing. You need to be trying, but you don't need to be perfect. So I'm going to give you this analogy because, I'm a queen of analogies. Chasing perfection is like trying to capture the wind. Oh, there, I got it. Wait, there's some more. Oh, wait, I got, wait, And that's how stupid you look. Because you're never reaching it. You're never catching it. Perfection isn't real. But what is real is you. You growing, you being better, and you being good is real. And you being good enough is also real. You being perfect is not. And guess what? It never will be. Newsflash. Perfect people don't exist. Oh, no, that's not true. Perfect people do exist. I'm going to show you one right now. Close your eyes. And there you go. There he or she is, right in your imagination. But out here in reality, there's no perfect people. I know we hear that all the time, but I think a lot of times we don't actually get that when it's in front of our face or recognize it in our own lives. So don't run after the wind. Be happy with the wind blowing around you. Do you see the difference in the mindset? So you make other people unhappy around you, but what I'm saying is if you have people around you who have that need, if they're working on it and they're self-aware, that's beautiful. Help them to work on it. If they're not working on it, you might want to back up because they're going to make you miserable too. Those same people come across as judgmental because they're judging themselves. And so therefore they're judging you too. They come across as judgmental. Some people have seen this with their parents or grandparents. They come across as judgmental. but that's not always their intention. But it can be off-putting, and it can make you feel bad about yourself and make you measure up to something that isn't real in the first freaking place. So let's talk about it in these three different areas: friendship, dating, and business. So when it comes to friendship, these people who think that everything has to be perfect, they sometimes will ruin friendships for the reason I just mentioned. They will ruin friendships because they think that everything's got to be perfect. They will never give you, I wouldn't say never, they will often not give you a compliment on an accomplishment because your accomplishment wasn't perfect. You won that race, but you zigzagged a little too much to the left or to the right, and they'll comment on what they notice you did wrong instead of complimenting you and congratulating you on the fact that you freaking won. That can be off-putting. Those people can really make you feel bad about yourself. Again, that's not always their intention, but when people do that to you, 9 times out of 10, they're also doing it to themselves. Think about how awful they must make themselves feel. And it's one of the most miserable ways you can live is to chase the wind. You get a lot of exercise, but you accomplish nothing except exercise. You don't actually get anywhere. So when it comes to your friendships, just know if you are one of these people that has to have everything just right all the time, you are doing things to people around you that you're probably not aware of. And if you're not sure, talk to the people around you, because I promise you, you are. Now, when it comes to the area, and also when it's back up to friendship just for a second, when it comes to friendships, you want to be mindful if you want to have those people in your lives, because if they're working on that, don't throw them away, because we're all imperfect and we all have flaws. But if they refuse to work on it, you might want to draw back from hanging around them too much, because their misery will become your misery. And that's true for any of your friendships. So now when it comes to dating, this is a big one, because the people who need things to be perfect all the time will usually often ruin their relationships. I can't imagine being married to someone like that. It's different when you're dating, because you're dating, you're getting to know the person, you have not made a lifetime commitment, and you're dating. But when you're married, if you actually met your vows, when you're married, you've made a lifetime commitment to that person. That means all the crap that they go through, you go through too. So you want to be mindful if you have a mate who has the need to be perfect all the time. You want to consider whether or not you want to be with that person long term. And let me explain to you the many reasons why. Number one, they will hesitate to make decisions that they should make, because I can't move forward and do this because it's got to be just right. It's not the same thing as someone who has a standard. Someone who has a standard is good. It's beautiful. Sometimes that can be annoying too, but it's still good. You should always have standards, because you know who doesn't have a standard? A trash can. So just think about that. So you don't, if you're going to date someone and you want to consider whether or not you want a long-term relationship with them, they're going to halt their own life out of a need for perfection before they move. I'm going to say that again. They're going to halt their own progress in their own lives out of their need to be perfect, for everything to be just right before they make a move. You know what? If everything was just right before people made moves, we would have no inventions. We would have none of the great names that you can possibly think of. They wouldn't have done anything because everything wasn't just right. Sometimes you just need to have a certain standard and move. So when you're dating a person like this, they're going to cause problems because they're going to say, no, we can't do this. And they're also going to be hard on you. They're going to be hard on you when you're trying to do something. So consider that. When it comes to business, to me, this is I think dating is one of the biggest ones, but to me, the business part is just as strong. If you have someone you're in business partnership with, or your sponsorship, whatever the relationship is in business, if they are like this, the positive thing is that they are going to make sure everything is just right, Sometimes they're good in business because they will not hand you a sloppy report. They will not do a presentation and representing your company or your partnership or your business all willy-nilly. They will make sure everything's right. That can be a good thing. But where this can be a bad thing is they will over criticize you. They will over criticize what your plans are. They will shoot down good ideas because they're not perfect. They're not just right. So you want to be mindful of these people in doing business with them. Doesn't mean you can't do business with people like that. But if you're going to be in close partnership with them, you might want to reassess whether or not that's necessary for you. And every situation is different. So some situations it might be. It might be. But in business, you want to be mindful of these people because, again, their pluses are they're going to make sure everything's just right. But the minuses is they at the other side of that token. So it's like a coin. There's a heads and the tails. So the heads is that they're going to make sure everything is just right. The tails is that they won't do anything unless it's just right. And that can halt progress within the company or business. So when you see that happening, sometimes one of the best things you can do is have a conversation with that person. To me, it's much easier to have that conversation on a professional level than it is on a personal level. People tend to take things a little differently professionally than they do personally. Sometimes it depends on how mature they are, but you want to have a conversation with that person. So if you're one of the people I'm talking about, what do you do if you just need to have everything perfect all the time? What it boils down to is balance. You have an imbalanced thinking in the first place, and that is the root of your problem. So when you look at something and you're like, okay, what is the standard before I move forward with this plan? What is the minimum I need to have? Give it a number, give it details. Once you do that, it's easier for you to say, okay, it's not perfect, but I at least have this done. I'll give you the example again that I use of myself. All right, I might be wearing sweats and a hoodie when I go down to the corner store, but at least I showered. At least I smell like, body oil or whatever lotion I put on that day. So that is my minimum standard because I really need to go to the store and I got a lot of stuff to do. I don't have time to get all pretty. That's the minimum standard. No, I didn't go outside perfect, but I had a minimum standard. So if you find yourself being that person that has the need to be perfect all the time, I want you to give yourself detailed standards for whatever it is that you're trying to do, because that will help you to mentally balance yourself out. And you're going to have to do this over and over again through repetition. But if you do it, it will help you to balance yourself out so you can stop making yourself so miserable and everybody else around you. And the other thing I want to point out, because this was a problem that I used to have, and I know it's not just me, self-condemnation. No, you are not perfect. You do not need to beat yourself up for it. Beating yourself up because you're not perfect is like beating yourself up because you're walking to California and you didn't make it there in 3 hours. Well, isn't that kind of silly? Perfection isn't real. It's not something you can attain. It's nothing you'll ever reach. But what should be your goal is progress, not perfection. There's a big, big difference between that. So I'm going to go ahead and answer questions right now. I see, what do you do when your parents force you to be perfect? Ooh, that's a good one, because there's a lot of kids out there right now, and I talk to them who go through this. So and it's not just kids, because some of y'all are 32 and 50 and still going through this. You have to, it's different for a teenager than if you're an adult. But if you have parents who are constantly picking at you, nitpicking at you because you're not perfect and just finding something to criticize about you all the time, if you're an adult, you can tune them out. You can also try to get them to see the error of their ways. But sometimes that doesn't work either. The number one way, honestly, sometimes is to just cordially tune them out. When people are old, and I'm talking about for the adults, it's different for if you're a child. For the adults, if that's the case, you are going to have to tune them out, because old dogs can learn new tricks, but damn, it's hard. So don't stress yourself out trying to change them. But what you can do is change your mindset and how you receive it. Is their criticism valid, or is it their own Is it their own imperfections that they're projecting onto you? If you really assess that and you recognize that, you begin to handle things a little differently because you're like, you know what? That's her. That ain't me. I look good. And you move on, whatever the criticism was. But if you're a teenager, and I'm saying this because this happens with teenagers, that is much harder. And for you, you do have to have, or at least attempt to have the conversations with your parents to help them recognize the difference. Sometimes parents do that because they want you to be your best and they want what's best for you. And many parents, when they do it, sometimes are well intended, but sometimes they are projecting their own crap onto you. And similarly to what I told adults, you have to eat the meat and spit out the bones. Take in what's true, throw out the rest. And when you are a child, you can't be disrespectful about it. At least I can't be. So hopefully you can't be. And I don't want you to be. Don't be disrespectful to your parents about it. But you might have to tune out some things. Seriously consider the things they're saying, because maybe some things are not just random insults. Maybe they're right about some things, but consider whether they're right or not. If they are, what can I do about it? If not, throw it away. I don't eat bones, just the meat. And you should too. Living up to others' expectation is what Dwayne calls Atlas syndrome. All over the map. I love you, Dwayne. Yes. But to that concept, if you are living up to other people's expectations all the time, you will always be, for the rest of your life, on an emotional roller coaster, but you will never go anywhere. Stop. Get off the roller coaster and start walking yourself. Yes, Samantha says it's deflection most of the time. They're placing their standards on you. Yep, that's another way of putting it. Yep. I didn't use the word deflection, but that's what I meant. I used one of the synonyms. But yes, that is exactly, Samantha's exactly right. That's what we're talking about. Projection, that is what I use. But both are true. Both are true. And there's a few other words. So if perfect doesn't exist, should I still try to do my best? That's an excellent question. No, you should just sit around eating ice cream and farting all day long, nothing else. No, but actually, yes, because remember I said perfection should never be your goal. Progress should be. Progress requires you making an effort at being better. It doesn't mean, and also just because you didn't get better overnight doesn't mean that you don't have progress. It's like one of my clients that I've been coaching through quitting smoking, and it's working. I had her progressing little by little by little. Instead of saying, just quit smoking, just stop. And here's the magic potion 1, 2, 3 to get it done. Yay! People say that crap all the time, but it's not true. No, that's not real. And I said that to her too. I'm like, that's not real. That's not going to happen. Here's what's realistic. We cut down the cigarettes little by little, and it's working. Coupled with her will. It's not a magic potion, and I didn't sit there and go, oh, do a seance over her. I just gave her some common sense ways of doing it that work for her. So when it comes to doing your best, you should always do your best no matter what area you're talking about. You should absolutely give your best. But giving your best doesn't mean trying to be perfect. Because I don't care how hard you try, none of us can jump up and reach the sky. You can if you're in an airplane, but not by yourself. That's not realistic. But what is realistic, if you want to reach up and touch the sky, you can go parasailing. You can skydive. There's all different, what do you call it? Hand gliding. It's called paragliding or hand gliding. You know what I'm talking about, that thing. You can do any of those. Jump from an airplane. Then you can touch the air way up there in the sky. That's realistic. It's not realistic for you to jump up all by yourself and just touch it because you're special. I gave you that as an example because sometimes we tend to do that. Yes, Samantha's like, progress is always the goal. Yes. And here's the thing. If you make progress your goal instead of perfection, it's so much more peaceful. And if you stop giving a fuck about what everybody else thinks, it's such a relief. It's so much more peaceful because you're taking the weight off of your shoulders. The weight that you shouldn't be carrying in the first place. Everybody else's opinion, Why do you care so much? They're just other humans with thoughts in their head just like you. Doesn't mean they're right. Why do you care? You care because you don't know who you are yet. But once you do, you'll start realizing how very, very silly many people's opinions are. 90% of the people around you opinions are based more off of ignorance than knowledge. Just think about that. There's always room for improvement. So we progress steadily, then claim perfection. I like that, Dennis. You're still not going to be perfect, but you will be really good and better. So absolutely. There's always room for improvement. But thank you for bringing up that point, Dennis, because I didn't harp on that enough. You're never, ever going to get to a point where there's no room for improvement. Unless you close your eyes and go to sleep, because that's only in dreamland. You will never get to a point where there's no room for improvement. So don't expect that of yourself, because that's expecting perfection. I love that. Samantha said, improvement is the biggest room in the world. Yes, girl. Yes. Air high five for you on that one. Cause yeah, that was good. Yes. Dwayne says, funny thing is, if you're used to being that way, it becomes repetitive in your psyche to where it becomes crippling. Yeah, he just reworded what I was saying earlier. That he's 1,000% right. It becomes crippling to you, but then you start to hinder the people around you, and especially your spouse. Especially your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, the one that you love the most. You're hurting them when you do this to yourself, because they also hate seeing you beat up yourself for something that isn't even real. You all know that I used to make and design wedding gowns. I recently shut down that business, but for over 20 years, I worked in the bridal industry. One of the things that bothered me the most, and I saw it the most, believe it or not, with prom girls and mother of the bride, they were worse than the brides. They would beat themselves up because they didn't fit into this image, an idea that wasn't realistic. I have had prom girls who are freaking gorgeous. I mean, absolutely belongs in a magazine, modeling everything, gorgeous, standing on my platform talking about my stomach. Oh, I got a bulge. No, you have a uterus. That's normal, because they think that they're supposed to have flat stomachs. You can have a flat stomach if you get some surgery and do some, what do you call that? Airbrushing? No, we used to call it airbrushing. What do we do now? The apps on the phone. I forgot. The word escapes me right now, but y'all know what I'm talking about. That's not real. And it bothered me so much for so many years to see young women beat themselves up for not fitting into an image that isn't real in the first place. Isn't real in the first place. Ooh, yeah. So Dwayne says, yup. And when they tell you about what you're doing, you'll become defensive because they're challenging what you think is normal to you. Ooh, Dwayne, high five on that one. He's 1,000% right. I don't even think I need to add to that one. He said it so wonderfully. Yes, the way the media right now, when I was younger, because I grew up in the 80s. So, when I was younger, the media was like magazines and TV. Today's media is social media. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever the media is that you're watching and you're on, YouTube. These images that people are portraying, they aren't freaking real. Like 80% of that crap isn't real. They're using apps to touch themselves up and look like, some of them look like Quasimodo in person, and they're like, oh, I look like Beyonce now. No, it's an app. And then you're comparing yourself to a freaking app. For what? You don't live in virtual reality. You live in this one. So stop comparing yourself to things that aren't real. Photo chopping. Yes, yes, yes. I love the way Dennis says this. So compete against your old self and improve, because if you claim perfection, you cease to improve. High five on that one. And that's 1,000% true. I always say, if you ever celebrate, it's okay to celebrate your wins, but if you ever feel like you've arrived, you've gone as far as you'll ever get. That's my quote, saying the same concept. You've never arrived. You've arrived at the next level, but you've never arrived at perfection because it isn't real. But absolutely, don't get too settled on where you are and claim your perfection, because then you'll never get better. Absolutely love that. Thank you, Dennis. There is so much more work to do than improving. And I love the way one of you wrote this. The person that you should be competing against the most is your old self. I love that. On my wall here, I can't read it right now. I'm sorry. I don't have my glasses on. There's a saying on my wall that says the same thing, but that's okay. I'm not going to get up and go read it. All right. William Delgado, who is on here, he remembers when I first learned how to dance salsa, which was 142 years ago. I know I look good for my age, right? Thank you. It was a long time ago. When I first started learning salsa, it was scary. And I became a good salsa dancer because I took the first step and because I stopped caring about what everybody else was thinking or what I look like. Because nobody learns how to, whether you're dancing salsa or ballroom dancing or swing dancing, whatever it is. When you first learn dancing, it's a great analogy for this. Nobody gets out on the dance floor and they're just like, huzzah, I'm dancing with the stars. I am so perfect. Said no one ever. And everybody you see who can dance really well, and I've been around dancers for so many years and danced with many professionals, and all of them will tell you it takes practice. You do not get perfect at dancing by going, damn, I'm not perfect. You keep practicing, you fumble, you step on some toes, you fall over, you do your dip wrong, you fall down when somebody dips you. Everybody's done that. You spin wrong, your timing's off. All of that happens when you're dancing, and that's normal when you're first learning. And you need to do that in order to get better, and it's okay. And if you haven't done that as a dancer, well, you're magical, and I would like to meet you because you're not real. But for the rest of us humans, it is. And another analogy for that is sewing. You know, I used to teach sewing as well. I've taught sewing a lot. I've taught sewing at a couple colleges too. When I'm teaching my students, I teach them, do not compare yourself to me. It took me I'm a really good professional seamstress, but it took me many years to get there. And I would tell my students all the time, do not compare yourself to my sewing because you will be disappointed in yourself that you don't sew as quick and as fast and as perfect as I do. You know what? It took me a long time and a lot of mistakes to get there. And many of them can be just as good as me if they just put the effort in and keep working on it. I do not hold special powers. I have practiced on it. And Samantha said, I saw you try. You talking about my dancing? Oh, Dwayne's got a good point. Celebrate your losses too. Celebrate your losses too, because they will test your resolve and force you to become better. Yes, and this is why I love having long conversations with Dwayne, because the man is deep. He doesn't open up to too many people, but he's deep when you have a good conversation with him. Anyway, but yes, you should celebrate your losses too, because that's how you learn and that's how you get better. You're not going to get better because you're great all the time and no one ever insults you and you never do anything wrong and never make any mistakes. That is a world that none of us live in. Your losses are not really losses. They're learning opportunities. I know you've all heard that before, but it really is actually true. They're learning opportunities. So take your embarrassing moments. Oh, I got to tell you about one. Many years ago now. We're talking probably 20 years ago at this point. I used to go to poetry events, and I went to this poetry reading. Samantha might have actually been there at this one. I don't know if she remembers it or not, but I went to this poetry reading and I had memorized this whole poem that I wrote called What's in Your Bag. And it was really good, actually, really good and deep analogy about what's in our character and a lot of stuff I talk about now, actually. And I was like, I'm going to memorize this. I got up on stage, man, and I remembered like the first half of it, and then I forgot the rest. It was so freaking embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. But you know what? The good thing is there were good people around me. So the people around me, nobody was insulting me. They're like, hey, it happens. You know, they had that sort of attitude, which was beautiful. But I was really embarrassed. Do you think that ever stopped me from getting on the stage again? No. And I'm going to get on more stages. I made a mistake. I learned that I should have just put it on my phone or brought it on a piece of paper and it was okay for me to read it. But you see, back then I thought I needed to be perfect and have it perfectly memorized. And the truth is I would have performed much better had I just gotten rid of the idea that I needed to be perfect and instead had it written down in front of my face. It's just the truth. We all start somewhere and we have to practice to get better. Absolutely. Well, Samantha is really, really, really good at poetry. She's known for it locally. So she knows what I'm talking about when you get on stage and you just kind of make a mess of yourself and you keep going anyway. Um, but I don't know how much poetry she's still doing, but she's like super talented with it. And I hope she does bigger things. And I'm saying that publicly, Samantha. I want to see you doing bigger things with it. So, because she's got a real gift at that. Um, but anyway, I have really enjoyed talking to you guys. And this has been a lot of good feedback today, a lot of good replies. And I will see you guys again next week. So once again, really think about what I said. And I want you to see how you can apply it to yourself or maybe help somebody around you who might struggle with this, that actually wants to get help with this, because I do see that a lot. I do see people that know that this is a problem for them and they don't know how to solve it. They don't know how to deal with it. You might have the answer, for them. You might be able to help them with just one small part. If nothing else, give them the advice that I just gave today. Measurable, small goals as a standard. Everything else is cream on top. If you can get them to think that way, if you can get yourself to think that way, you'll stop being so perfect.